everybody. Everybody, a lot of people probably said that I haven't been on a stage for ages, and I had a wonderful day, so thank you everybody for being here. Back to boring. As already teasered, it's going to be a rant, it's going to be opinion. Feel free to disagree. But let me just quickly introduce myself. I'm Stefan. I spoke here 4 years ago. I wore a dinosaur costume. There was also a panda on the stage. Now I work for a company that is called Checkly. We don't only have a very cute logo, which is a fat raccoon, we call it, but we run headless Chrome in the cloud. And basically, if you're looking for a solution to do API monitoring or run Puppeteer and Playwright to do end-to-end testing, basically build good stuff and make sure that it doesn't break, you can give that a try. And over the last 10 years, I more and more became kind of like a vanilla JavaScript person. And let me tell you a story. So a few years ago, has anyone been around when the left pad thing happened? So that is 20% of the people. So basically what happened is that you came to work, you put on your computer, and the internet is on fire. Because a random person on the internet decided to unpublish something from the NPM registry for reasons. And everything just broke. CI/CD wasn't working anymore. Everybody was, we cannot deploy things, what's going on? And everybody was just piling GitHub issues, everything was going on. And that was me, just opening my computer and was like, oof, what's going on? So my CTO at the time came to me and was like, Stefan, why is everything broken? And isn't that all way too complicated and way too much code for what we're doing here? Isn't that a little bit too much? And I almost felt offended by this, right? So, and I made the argument, this is how we do it. It has to be snappy. It has to be highly engineered and crafted. And now looking back, I really have to say it was always all kind of weak arguments, sort of. Basically what I was telling him was like, this is how we do it. I was planning on dancing, but this was the most I can do as an introvert person that I can do here. So at the end of the day, I really love building websites, right? But secretly, I'm super overwhelmed of what's going on over the last few years. And I'm one of these people that is actually dreaming about this. Is there someone dreaming about code? I dream about coding a lot. Am I doing the right thing? Isn't that all too complicated? And I have this little voice in my head that is just telling me, did we lose direction, Stefan? Does it have to be like that? And this is the talk that Alex is basically teasering, 1 hour rant of things that we do in the web development world that may or may not be correct. And as you see that I love shiny tools, I love writing JavaScript, I love writing or building beautiful experiences. But when you look at the overall shape of the web, it's kind of weird. So you see here is HTTP Archive. It's one of these resources that scans the most visited websites on this planet and gives you nice, nerdy little statistics about what is going on. And things are just going heavier and heavier and heavier. So you see here, page weight is just going going higher and higher and higher all the time. And congratulations to all of us. In April, we passed 2 meg of page weight for a normal website on the medium level. Round of applause for us? I don't know. Windows 1, the operating system, is less than a megabyte. And we use 2 megs right now to draw boxes on a screen, right? I think that's weird. In the same time, JavaScript just increases, increases, increases. We ship more and more and more and more. And because JavaScript has to be downloaded, parsed, and executed, the moment that our stuff actually becomes interactive just goes back, goes further and further and further. And goes later and later and later. And the things that we're using right now is something like that, right? We're still building on the fundamentals of the web, which is HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Then we're putting a framework on it, React, Vue, Angular, Svelte, Remix. Then we have Vite, Rollup, Parcel, and we have to deploy it somehow. And this is a super incomplete list. I cannot even imagine how it would be if I would start doing web development today. No idea where to start, because that's so much stuff that I have to learn to send some HTML to a browser, right? And I might be okay with that, but let's go a little bit further. Maybe in 2012, the hello world, I was talking to Yves earlier, so the hello world with PHP was maybe 10K heavy, right? But now the hello world, when you kind of set up a new project, is already 100K of compressed resources. And I might be even okay with this. But the complexity sometimes feels like it's going out of the roof. This is this little voice in my mind that is like, do you do the right thing here, Stefan? And we all do this while writing the 200 megabyte plus node modules that we all install every day to generate some HTML. Josh Camo, who is known for his JavaScript, CSS for JavaScript developers course, he writes fantastic articles on CSS. So if you don't know Josh's work, you have to check that one out. He once said that he's building for the web for a while, and it has never been as easy to build complex apps. And I totally agree. But does really everything need to be a complex app? I'm not so sure about this anymore, to be honest. And here, a little self-reflection. This is me on stage like 6 years ago. Every website is a web app, and every web app is a website. This was me. Da-dum. Should really everything be an app, though, today? And do we need 250 megabytes of text files to render websites and build it in Node? Sometimes I feel like a rocket scientist. npm run rocket, right, or something. And I don't know what you're building. The web is pretty much everything, right? There are video platforms, blogs, shops, marketing sites, games, productivity apps, streaming, social networks. But I still think that there should be somehow a division of what we're building. And bear with me, it's very fuzzy here. So I like to build websites, right? Not particularly apps, I would say. But we just saw Code Sandbox. I would say that's 100% an app. And I'm fine with shipping, delivering, with all the complexity that comes with this. Amazon.com? Yeah. I don't know. There's a huge gray zone in the middle. But I feel like that we're always opting for the app stack rather than the website stack. Maybe. And for a year or two now, we're talking about MPAs versus SPAs. And am I the only person that really dislikes the term MPA, multi-page app? What is that? It's a website. So MPAs are basically websites where you have a navigation and you request some new HTML and you have a reload, right? SPAs is when you ship some HTML and then you do everything in the client. Little fun fact here, Amazon.com is an MPA, a normal website, and they still use jQuery 164 that was released September 12, 2011. So whenever you're kind of like feeling behind, just think about Amazon. But at the same time, I feel like the feeling and the conversations that we're having right now is always, hey, I want to build something new, what should I use? And I think that we're defaulting all the time to, you should use hipster framework ABC with this strategy, and it has to run offline and on the edge, and whatever else is trending on Hacker News. I think sometimes in the front-end world, we forget that it is very often that it depends, like everything in programming. Because every technology choice has trade-offs. You add something, it becomes slower. You drop something, it becomes faster, maybe more maintainable. And here's the PHP reference. This is how I started, right? A PHP script and jQuery Sugar mainly to do things that the HTML spec at the time couldn't give me. And then we were releasing everything, and CDNs were already a thing when I started. We still had this single origin server in a single region, and then we had all the assets on a CDN place to deliver it very, very quickly. But this is not really solving the problem of a person from Australia kind of requesting my stuff from Germany, because the speed of light is just limiting. We're not going to get faster than that. So that is not great. But still, the model of shipping stuff for the web at the time was just beautiful. The server was crunching all the stuff, was making API requests, was making database calls, and then we shipped some HTML, some CSS. Everything became visible after the CSS was there, and everything became functional after the JavaScript was there. 3, 4, 5 files, a little bit of data. And then of subsequent navigations, different HTML, but all the stuff was sitting in cache already. And browsers are pretty good at caching assets. And browsers are also pretty freaking good at rendering websites. There are things like before and forward caches right now. There's paint holding to not have like a black or white screen when you navigate things. And for some reason and another, at some point we just started doing this. I was right in this thing. When Angular 1 appeared, I was invested 100%. Because this now allowed me as a front-end developer to kind of take over all the responsibilities and do all these things without kind of entering the server side. But this also meant that we started doing Spinageddon, right? Everything was spinning, we were doing components everywhere. And we kind of flipped this model where the server did all the work for us to something where we moved all the work to a user. So we render all the components, and then all the things are rendered and treated and fetched from within the browser. And this is kind of awkward, because the browser and the user, this is the only thing that we do not control. We can never know what the connection is that our users are on. We don't know if they're a crappy phone or an iPhone. We don't know if they have the new M2 Mac that was released 2 days ago or something. I think that's super weird to give away this responsibility because we just don't know. You can make your servers faster, but you can never control your user's network or your user's device. And then what we started doing is we jiggled around with the history API and we fiddled around, changed the URLs, replacing something in DOM, doing some wild stuff. And it gave us more control. And I want to believe that at the time that we shifted all this work to the client to also build beautiful experiences. That is what I hope. Maybe I'm just looking back. But how often do we build these things on the web? Where something is nicely transitioning from one thing to the other, where it's just delightful to click a button. How often do you see that? Well, I don't. If you have a nice website, except from the one from Sarah Drasner, where she built a prototype, I would love to see it. What we use client-side navigation and JavaScript for is pretty much like that. You click a button and you replace everything. But the thing with this is, and here we have another trade-off, when you do these kind of things, what you see in this video is, first of all, that when you click a button and you navigate and you replace the entire DOM, scroll positions are not persisted. So when a person clicks the back button in the browser, it will be somewhere else. And the same thing is when a user is kind of hitting a button and hitting the back button again with the keyboard, it's also not focusing on the element that actually triggered this action. So with client-side navigation, you might break focus handling, scroll handling, and assistive technology, because also just dumping new things into the DOM will not tell a screen reader, hey, this happened here right now. These are all the things that a browser does by default. And when you look at the framework level, there's, for example, Next.js. Next.js fixes that for you. Hey, that's fair. They have something in their code base that they call a route announcer. So for assistive technology, what you can do is you can place an element in the DOM. It is invisible. And you can give it some area stuff, which then tells assistive technology, like a screen reader, hey, something changed. Cool, cool. Next.js has also an experimental flag that helps you out with kind of keeping track of scroll positions. So when you hit the back button, so that you end up where you started. And I think this is cool. But let me just ask you, just because we can do these things, and we can break browser functionality, and we can fix it, does that mean that we actually should? I'm not sure. I really don't know. It's always trade-offs, remember? There are situations, though, when things go really, really well, right? You see here SoundCloud, and you see on the bottom there's this little playing widget. It's playing a song from a Berlin artist. It's an electro-funky song. And you're navigating around, and this entire thing is still playing for the entire time. This is not possible with different navigations. So you cannot say that client-side or JavaScript approaches are entirely not the right approach. It always depends on what you want to do. With client-side routing, you can persist state across navigations. You can partially render routes, right? If you have something super complex and you're hitting a button and you only want to update this tiny thing here, you don't have to re-request that. You can keep UI elements alive. but also your persisting state, right? You're putting that all in memory. And I'm using Twitter, the progressive web app. This is me every third day, because somewhere in this app is a memory leak. And now we're all JavaScript developers. I don't know how to treat memory in JavaScript. Does anyone from you know? This is not easy, right? Persisting state. So we entered the stage and we were showing spinners everywhere and we felt great and delivered great experiences. But then Google came along. I mean, maybe we didn't even care about our users and showing spinners and delaying everything. But then Google came around and was like, hey, this is not fast enough, people. Showing a spinner is no content. Let's fix this, right? Another little side fact, when you run Lighthouse on google.com, you don't get a green score. And I think this is super nice, because this is literally just a search box. So we went again to the drawing board. We started shipping a lot of JavaScript, feeling good about ourselves. But this was clearly not working, right? Because we were shifting all the work to the client side. So we fixed this by something like that. We pre-rendered the stuff that was built for the browser on the server side, and we pre-rendered the HTML. And then we had to inline something in the HTML page to kind of tell the JavaScript that we now loaded, hey, by the way, this was used to render this HTML. And I think this is a beautiful concept by itself, because you run sort of the same code on the client and the browser. But at the same time, this means that you run the same code on the client and the browser. If your templates are not straight, you're just doubling all the stuff. Everything that you render will now go into the bundle somewhere. And then you're shipping a lot of code that you already rendered in HTML, and then you have to hydrate it too, right? So that it actually works, and attach a lot of event listener to everything. I was a big fan of that. These days, I think it's super weird. And then we still had the problem of the same origin, right? If we do this on a dynamic server, I still have the Australia-Germany problem. So how could I fix that? Well, let's put it into build processes and deploy it to a CDN, the same way as we do with our assets. So static HTML just became another static cache on the caches that we already put in place, right? And somehow in this Jamstack movement for the last 3-4 years, it somehow became okay to wait for deployments. Is it just me? I've seen sites deploying in 10 to 15, 20 minutes. It was just normal stuff, and we were cutting-edge technologists. Super weird. So we started rendering server-side stuff. Then we moved everything to the client. Then we started statically pre-rendering things. But clearly, this model wasn't really working well, because we started sitting in front of our computers doing git push and then waiting 15 minutes for Netlify to deploy something, if you're dealing with a little bit more data. So we got creative again, and we started fixing the problem, right? So Vercel went for something that is called ISR, incremental static generation, which is cool technology. So what you can do is you can define that you want to have an ISR route. Then this is rendered when the request comes in. But this is based on the stale while revalidate request header. And while this page or whatever you're doing there is sitting on the CDN level, Vercel will update that in the background every X minutes. So you can deploy your app, and you don't have to redeploy it, because it's automatically updating the content that is powering it in the background. Netlify didn't like that too much, so they cooked their own. They went for distributed persisting rendering. It's the same approach without the revalidation part. So what you can do on Netlify is that you can define, okay, I want to pre-render 10 routes, but the next thousands, I only want to render and put on the CDN level when the request comes in. And I think that's cool. I think it's fascinating technology, honestly. But this little thing in my head is still asking me, don't we deliver the same user experience just with more code and complexity? I don't know. And I'm picking on React.js docs now. I don't have a problem with React, but I had to pick something here. So this is React with JavaScript enabled on a fast 3G connection, right? It is pre-rendered. I think it works really well. You click a button, and you get a fast response. Super nicely navigated. I think it works super, super well. But now let's open React again, reactjs.org, without JavaScript. And I would argue the experience is pretty much the same. You click, you have a first render, you click around, everything is running super smoothly. The difference is here. On initial page weight, React.js.org right now has roughly 400K. Without JavaScript, it has 50K. And even after 4 navigations, I don't think that there's a huge benefit of shipping that much code. And you might now say, well, there are new React.js docs in the making, right? I know. So here they are. And this is the root of the new React.js docs. And I know that sandbag is everywhere in there, so that is not included there. So this is just the boring entry point of the React.js docs. It goes fairly well with Lighthouse scores here, but it ships 300K of assets and 30 requests, roughly. For this, look at this page. I think this is just fundamentally wrong in one way or another. So here's my hot take. If your site feels like a boring multi-page app, maybe it should be one. End of story. But I think it's weird that we have React.js docs where really talented engineers are working on to kind of get these Lighthouse scores, and then you see a page like that. I found that like 2 years ago, and I think it's fantastic. It's this website from Italy. I don't know what's written there. It has all the good stuff, table layouts, spinning stuff, whatever. It is still updated. How great is that? But look at this. It has a better performance score than the React.js docs. And I'm telling you, the person that maintains this page from Italy is FTPing stuff up. So what I would like to do is I would really love to write less code for the stuff that I do with more easy-to-use technology. And the first big part here is that for the last year, almost a decade, we're just reinventing and installing accessible UI controls because HTML obviously is not powerful enough. Anyone try to make a beautiful airport date picker like we do? No, not possible. Or stylable select menus? Not possible. But there's movement. So here's the OpenUI organization, and this is a bunch of folks that look into all the design systems that are out there and kind of look for common patterns of components that all the companies are using and building and trying to make specs around that so that browsers can pick them up and can start putting it into the platform. And here's what they're looking at, right? They're looking at alerts, badges, breadcrumbs, checkboxes, date pickers in there, right? So maybe we can have this airport or a flight booking thing going on. And these are right now in an advanced stage. So let me show you this. How often did you try to build something like that? You click something and it goes up and you want to style that a little bit. This can work without JavaScript. And this is one of the most trivial things probably in web development, but having a stylable thing that opens on click without defining it in JavaScript and just style it with CSS, I think is beautiful. And we need more of this. So what you see here is the select menu element that is already shipping in Chromium. There's currently feedback stage, and there's also the pop-up attribute. Imagine that. You could have a button that defines another area, and it automatically opens and closes. I think this is beautiful. There's also more stuff on the select menu. Most of these demos kind of work with very little or without JavaScript, and I think we need more of this. I think the web and what we need the web for has outgrown its capabilities. There has to go more stuff into the platform so that we can ship better products with less code. There's also a new dialog API for modals, right? I probably have built 50 modals over my life. Most of them probably not accessible because building an accessible modal is actually very, very hard. So we have a new API for that one. And if you want to learn more about how to use this one, Adam from the Chrome DevTools team, he knocked it out of the park with this tutorial. So if you want to learn how to use the dialog element, this is worth your time. This is stellar work. So going forward, if the web platform would provide more high-level components, we could focus on the things that we actually want to do and ship less code. Android and iOS developers are probably smiling on how we do things because there are a lot of primitives that we don't have. We're just rolling our own. And I want to have tabs, stylable date pickers. I want to have all these kind of things so that I can move on and go on with my life. And I want to bet on web standards too. And yes, I'm a vanilla guy. That's the progressive enhancement thing, right? If you look at React documentation, you find this little snippet here to do form handling. There's nothing particularly wrong with this, but isn't it weird that we're preventing browser default behavior since forever? We're shipping to the browser, and yet we're always telling it, nope, don't do it. The thing is, when your JavaScript is not kicking in with this stuff pre-rendered, you know what happens? It will be an HTTP GET request with the parameters of the form in the URL. Is your API able to handle that? Or is it just a JSON API and will just fail? There's this dependency of JavaScript that we just take for granted, but the bigger you scale, the more visitors you have, the more requests will just fail at some point. And there's just this idea that everybody has JavaScript, right? That's just not true. I don't have JavaScript when I sit in a... Anyone knows Deutsche Bahn here? A few people. Wi-Fi Deutsche Bahn? Not a thing. You maybe get the HTML, but then you're stuck, right? Theoretically, I have JavaScript, unless I sit in the Deutsche Bahn going somewhere. So progressive enhancement and building things that just work is a thing to really build useful products. But I still want to create delightful experiences while kind of betting on web standards and technology. And there's one proposal that hopefully will survive, because this thing was tried to get into the web platform a few times. What you see here is shared element transitions. This is released in Google I/O. They tried that for the third time at least to get this into the web, to have a nice transition from A to B. So what you see here is a prototype from Jake Archibald, and they're transitions from going A to B. And the way it works is that you can tell the browser, hey, I want to transition from A to B, and the browser captures sort of like a screenshot that you can then have two states that you can transition using CSS over another. Wouldn't it be cool if we would have that? Man, that would be beautiful. And this is currently working, conceptualized for single-page application. If this goes to multi-page apps, then the line is even blurrier, because you cannot differentiate anymore what you're looking at. Here's the stuff, and I have to run a little bit quicker, because can I go 2 minutes over, Alex? I only want to ship the necessary code. And I shipped a lot of JavaScript for the things that I did for a while, and then I just abandoned everything because I'm a 11 fanboy. Just ship HTML. Don't add a JavaScript pipeline. Do you know how delightful it is to not wait for JavaScript to be crunched? I think that's a nice thing for the things that I do, right? If you're building SoundCloud, that is not your thing, but for the things I do, I think that works really well. But there are also new approaches to how we should build for the web. And I think Astro is particularly interesting here, because Astro wants to turn it around and not use a JavaScript stack for the entire website, but rather include something that they call island architectures. Something maybe like jQuery widgets, right? Like 10 years ago. That you have a tiny area that can build and can be interactive, but the rest is still boring. Works no matter what. And I want to push code and see things live in seconds. Because even this 3.5 minutes build process that I'm currently dealing with on my private stuff, I think it's too long. I think it shouldn't be like that. So we established this model here, right, to pre-render everything and to put all the HTML and assets on a CDN layer. What if we could have dynamic servers everywhere, right? What if all this stuff becomes fast enough to actually execute code so that I can push it and it's live 10 seconds later? And I think we're close. Honestly, I think we're close. So there are a lot of edge functions happening. There's a lot of edge. Everything is edge right now. Everything is experimental. And I think very soon I can build an app that runs dynamic code on the server. I can drop the build process, and I think I can ship like that. And I think that is super, super refreshing. I'm super excited about this. So overall, I think that over the last 10 years, JavaScript and how we use JavaScript, I think, really pushed the boundaries of the web. I mean, I couldn't even have imagined 10 years ago what we're building today, right? But if we think this through, if this pushing for boundaries and what the web can do, and if browsers are following our needs and our requirements, and if navigation transitions are easy to build and servers are around the world, maybe we can reduce all the complexity, and we can go to a boring stack. And we can let the server do its job, crunching data and serving HTML. And maybe we can ship less JavaScript because the web is more powerful by itself. And I really can then build more beautiful experiences because this is really what I want to do all day. Beautiful stuff. So whatever I tell you here in this 30-minute shorter end, use whatever works for you, honestly. But consider the trade-offs. Everything has trade-offs. Whatever you use or don't use, there's always a pro and a con, and there's no silver bullet. Let it be performance, accessibility, complexity, there's always something that is better or worse. And I don't think JavaScript applications should be the hammer for every nail. If you want to have a look at these slides, they're at Speaker Deck, Stefan Judis, that is my name. So, and now we're rolling into the closing, so all I want to say is keep pushing hard, have fun, because this is how we do it. Thank you very much.